Thank you.
Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Good evening and welcome to all of you who are watching on Facebook and YouTube tonight. This is the CAF Warbird Tube for tonight, episode 92. And on tonight's episode, we'll be talking with the team from Airbase Georgia about their Corsair and its role in the new movie Devotion, which is in theaters right now. Now, before we get started, could you do us a favor? If you haven't already done so, please take a second to like, share, or subscribe and follow us. And if you do follow us on YouTube and subscribe, click the little bell icon and you'll get notifications about all our new episodes of Warbird Tube. So joining me now from a nice, warm Atlanta area from Airbase Georgia, it's the Airbase leader, Joel Perkins. Joel, good evening and thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, Steve. Good to be here. Thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about Airbase Georgia. You used to be known as the Dixie Wing, and a little while ago you changed your name to more accurately reflect the breadth of everything you do down there at Peachtree.
Absolutely. So we reached airbase status about a year and a half ago, a great achievement. We're located at Falcon Field Airport, Foxtrot Charlie in Peachtree City. We are very fortunate to have a really cool inventory of fighters, everything from the P-51 all the way down to the Stearman that is under restoration right now. But it is going to be just absolutely beautiful. Hats off to the Stearman team. Currently, Airbase Georgia is just over the 400 member mark. We obviously have contracts for movies with the studios. We have a contract with Eglin Air Force Base, very fortunate for that. We participate in air shows, both static, aerobatic displays. We host formation clinics. So we've got a lot going on. I tell all our members that we're a volunteer organization, but we're really a business.
True.
And, and we have to operate like that. We have a wonderful maintenance team that just keeps all these warbirds in fantastic condition. And I tell you who I really celebrate, the maintenance guys are awesome, but it's the guys in the shop. They come through that side door. They don't say a word. They make the most beautiful parts and they keep us going, and they go out the side door, never say a word from them at all. But just a lot of talented team members there. I'm very fortunate to be honored with the leadership position.
Well, great. And we're going to see some of that workshop area. Philip Beagle from your group is going to take us on a little walk around of some of those facilities that you just mentioned. With the aircraft you have in the inventory at Airbase Georgia, you have CAF's very first aircraft, the Red Nose P-51 Mustang. Indeed.
Yeah, very, very fortunate to have that iconic aircraft. No matter where it goes, everybody knows Red Nose.
And of course, the Corsair. This is the one that we'll be talking about tonight. How long has the Corsair been at Airbase Georgia?
Well, I'm going to tell you that I'm very young in the organization. I've only been there for about 5 years. So I would say that ask Philip that question, because okay. Philip, again, was instrumental in getting that aircraft on board.
Great. So the aircraft is in the movie Devotion. How did the initial overture come to Airbase Georgia looking for a Corsair?
Well, it's a great story, and Philip's going to fill in the blanks here. We actually were down at Statesboro for a formation flyover for a football game. Had nothing to do with the movie. And then Philip, through contacts of his, put the one of the members of the movie team, I don't know if it's aerial photography or director, anyway, got him in a ride in the T6. And so they went up. He got some shots of the Corsair in flight. So it was just perfect timing for all our aircraft to be down there for another event, for Philip to have these contacts. And Philip's a deal maker. You know, he is a powerful tool if you'll just let him loose, and such an asset for Airbase Georgia. And he put all this together.
Yeah. Great. And we'll visit with him a little bit later on and get the nitty gritty details on how this all came together. When you see have you seen the movie yet? That would be my first question.
No, I actually talked to Chris Madrid today. We have purchased a number of tickets for a private viewing for the membership.
Okay.
And we're going to do that at 1:00 this Saturday.
Okay. Oh, very nice. And just thinking about it, what do you think your reaction is going to be when you see that Corsair on the screen for the first time?
You know, it's surreal to know that one of the aircraft that I am entrusted with, along with other members, is actually contributing to the story. And what's cool about this is long before this came up, I read the book.
Right.
And so when we got the opportunity for the movie, I was like, oh, wow, I know the story. This is amazing. So I tell you, it's such an honor to keep these folks' stories alive. You know, we use these machines to tell the stories for those who can't. Right. And it's really an amazing thing for me to get to do. And to see this all play out and one of our aircraft participating in something that millions of people are going to see and keeping that history alive, I just can't think of anything better.
Awesome. And you mentioned the book Devotion. Adam Makos, the author, very, very detailed author. He's heavily into research. And even though the movie itself is going to cover the main events of what happened in the Korean conflict, there's so much more in the book that even if you go see the movie, right, go see the Corsair, but also pick up the book and read, as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful book.
It is. All right, and we're going to turn things over to Philip Beagle right now. He's going to take us on a little walk around through the hangar at Airbase Georgia.
My name is Philip Beagle. I'm a member of the Commemorative Air Force located right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Our airbase name is Airbase Georgia. We're located about 35 miles southwest of Atlanta. If you'd like any information on us, please go to airbasegeorgia.org. I'm here to give you about a 10-minute interview or walkthrough of our hangar. Right now, I'm standing in our machine shop. You can kind of see from our oldest mills, we have turntable mills. These guys actually make parts, pieces, back to the original drawings and original specs from World War II, all the way up to Millie. Millie is our brand new CNC mill that is way beyond anything I can understand or talk about. But what these guys do is they sit there in a computer program the part in there, tell Millie, go make that part, Millie, and Millie spits out the part they need. Like I said, I can talk. I have no idea how these guys do what they do. Let's go look at a Stearman real quick. So back here in our shop, we've restored 3 or 4 airplanes. Right now we're restoring our Stearman. We've restored our T6, our SBD Dauntless, and shortly we're going to work on our P-47 Thunderbolt, which I'll show you here in a minute. But right now, let's look at some Stearman parts. So right here is the center section of the Stearman wing. It's the part that goes right above the pilot. It's up high. In here houses the fuel tank. What fascinates me is seeing the airplanes taken apart, seeing how much delicate detail and caring going back to putting it back together, how the glue works, how the bolts work, how all the wood works together to make the airplane stable and safe. Let's go look at the fuel tank. Here, this is our fuel tank. And it's really not that big to fit in a Stearman, but this is what goes in the Stearman. And it's funny because the Mustang holds, for argument's sake, about 180 gallons of fuel. The Corsair's 300 plus gallons of fuel. And here's the Stearman. So I guess you could call this an economical Warbird, maybe? But something we were really trying to focus on back here is getting new members involved in restoring these airplanes. So here, AMPs and IAs teach the classes on how fabric actually works on these airplanes. Stitching, what sort of glue to use, how you fold it over, how the fabric is cut, how everything's put together. And the purpose of what we do here is not to keep the airplanes flying, but to keep them flying for a purpose. And I like to say we teach education through living history. Here's some of the finished parts. So you can see the detail and care that go into this. A&Ps and IA, of course, all supervise every work that goes on, but it's amazing to me. They take it apart, inspect it, look at it, put it all back together, and I can barely talk straight. Let's go look at the fuselage. Or actually, speaking of not talking straight, let's look at here. This is the rudder that they just finished putting back together. And if you look at it, you can see the stitching, the glue, the tape over it. Every aspect, like I said before, was blown apart, looked at, inspected by A&Ps and IA, then put back together. And here's our fuselage for our steerman. When we first got the steerman, it was nothing but these steel tubes right here. And you can see them kind of running all through the airplane. And what the women and the men did, they found the parts they needed. They inspected every pulley, every bolt, every cable, all new wires. Every piece of hardware on the airplane was inspected, replaced as necessary. So you can really see the detail of the restoration that our team here does. Let's go look at some other cool toys. Here's something to point out. When you see the firewall of an airplane, the motor mounts here and here up to the airplane, but this is kind of cool. You get to see it before everything's put onto the airplane. And it's fascinating to me how it all kind of interacts. Let's go look at a Mustang. So we're on an active airport, so it is loud sometimes. So who knows what just went by? Big jet. We don't like jets. We like propeller-driven airplanes from World War II. So here's our PT-19, and it was flying about 6 months ago. What we did was we took it down for a restoration of sorts. And the reason why is the fabric was looking a little long in the tooth, and we wanted to make sure it was flying okay. Now, just like that jet that just landed, made out of metal. Just like any commercial airplane you fly on, made out of metal. This airplane is made out of wood. So here's a rib from it, so you can really see how the airplane's assembled. And this entire wing is just like this, made out of wood. So part of it is, during a restoration, we examine the glue joints, we examine the nails, we run cameras all the way through the wing, we examine every single facet of it. Here's another great view of it. This gives you an idea of the wood going over it. Now, the grain has to run a certain way. The glue has to be exactly right. The nail pattern has to be right. I mean, these guys are real artisans at their work. And if you look, everything is wood. Spars are wood. Leading edges are wood. The skin's wood. It's amazing to see wood airplanes. Let's go look at the Mustang. I know I said that earlier, but this time really let's go look at the Mustang. So here it is. This is a P-51 Mustang. This is the P-51 Mustang. So as y'all may know, this is Red Nose. This was the first airplane in the CAF. Back in 1957, 3 individuals bought this airplane and donated it to CAF to start and found the CAF. So this is number 1. But what we want to do is, when we take it to air shows, we want people to get the idea of how it was during World War II. So what we did was, we put dummy guns back in the wings. So you really get the feel and the idea of how the airplane was set up during World War II. And it's just like I said before, it's one thing to have the airplanes, but we really want to teach the education of why the airplanes are set up they were. We teach, kids will come through, we teach about different wing shapes, why the wings are different on each one of the airplanes. I love this airplane, and all kind of off topic. As a volunteer, I've been a volunteer for about 20 years. I have 90 plus hours in the back of the airplane. And as a volunteer, I've been lucky enough to fly into Oshkosh in formation with 3 other Mustangs and the B-29 to start our Oshkosh Air Show. I've flown up the mall on VE Day. So the Commemorative Air Force gives you really great opportunities, not only serve the general public, but it's fulfilling for yourself as well. Now, let's go look at the airplane that caused me to join the CAF and created this whole problem that I have. I have a Warbird problem, my wife says. That's okay though, I don't mind it. So here's the SBD Dauntless. And this airplane had the exact same restoration done here as you saw the steerman in the back. Every single panel came off, every single nut, bolt, cable, pulley, wire, wings were disassembled. Every aspect of the airplane was examined and then put back to the pristine condition that you see here. There's only about 4 flying in the world, and we're lucky enough to have one right here in Peachtree City, Georgia. All right, I know. This whole thing's supposed to be about the Corsair. I got it. It's sitting right back here. In fact, you can probably see it over my shoulder. There she is. Now, it wasn't a movie, yes. It is an amazing airplane, yes, I agree. It is 2,000 plus horsepower of amazingness, but let's go look at 2 other airplanes first. So here's our T6. This is our pilot trainer right here. And this airplane also went through the exact same process. It was restored here in our hangar. Every nut, bolt, panel, piece was blown apart. Wings are inspected. Wing parts are replaced. The wiring, tubing, new engine, new accessories, everything was brand new. So this airplane's been flying for about 10 years and doing an amazing job for us, training our pilots so they can get in the airplanes, fly the big, fast, fun toys, the Corsair and everything like that. If you want some interesting facts, or you want to see our next interesting airplane, right back there is our P-47 Thunderbolt. It's an N model. I'll wait for the helicopter to pass. So it's an N model P-47. There's only about 6 to 8 flying P-47s in the world, and this is one of our pride restorations we're doing right now. If you're interested, come on down and look at it. Come down and get involved. Help us out any way you would like to. All right, it's time. You've put up with me long enough. It's been an arduous journey to get to this airplane, but here she is. Our Corsair, the movie star. This is one of 4 Corsairs in the movie Devotion. When you watch the movie Devotion, Corsair 203 was this airplane. I don't know, it doesn't say 203 now, but here's how they did it. So they applied movie paint, and the guys came in, the professional painters came in, and they said, we're gonna repaint the airplane. I said, wait, you can't just repaint our airplane. I mean, this is it, it's 5:30. You can't just repaint anything you want to. They said, no, we're applying movie paint. Okay, what's movie paint? So they pulled out, and this is not a joke, whiskey, mop and glow, and paint, and mix it all together, and it's movie paint. It's airworthy and safe, and there's no issues with it. But it's funny to see the Corsair in movie paint for a month or so while it's flying around, while it's on the movie, while it's doing everything. Here, come up here and let's look at the front. The business end, if you will. So this is it. 6 caliber, 50 caliber machine guns, 3 in each wing, 2,000 plus horsepower right there. But that's enough for me. Let's get Stan Music in, our pilot for the Corsair, and talk more about the movie.
Hi, I'm Stan Music. I'm a member of the Commemorative Air Force at Airbase Georgia. I have the privilege of getting to fly one of the most iconic airplanes that was ever invented. This is an F4U Corsair. The Corsair came to pass in World War II as a carrier-based fighter. It was designed to fly with carriers. However, it did a lot of flying off of land. It flew a lot off of Guadalcanal. The Marines made great use of it, and it was significant in the war in the Pacific. This first portion of the video, I want to talk to you a little bit about the aircraft, why it's the way it is. Everybody always looks at it and goes, why does it have those funky wings? And what we do with it these days. Then, in our next segment, I will talk about making the movie Devotion. I had the great opportunity to fly for that movie. I've not seen the movie yet, so I may only get 5 seconds on the screen, but I hear that I do get a little bit of credit at the end, so I'm delighted to talk about that. This aircraft is powered by an R2800. It's a twin-row radial. Nomenclature for aircraft engines is the first letter describes what the aircraft engine is. In this case, it's R for radial, and you can see the circumferential arrangement of cylinders. If it was an O, it would be opposed. If it's an HIO, it's a horizontal injected opposed. There's a whole series, but for this, it's 2,800 cubic inches, has 2,050 horsepower, and while it is very similar to the original engine, it's not identical. The original engine had an updraft carburetor, which was much more prone to fires. We now have replaced it with a downdraft carburetor type engine, off of a lot of the transports of the era, and that has a much lower risk of fires and still has great power performance. It's 2 rows of 9 cylinders. Radials are always an odd number of cylinders per row because they fire every other cylinder. And in a 18-cylinder radial, it alternates between the front and rear rows, but it also rotates around. This one has a 3-blade prop. The later Corsairs had 4-blade props. One of the unique features of the Corsair is the gull wing, and you'll notice that it has the wing that comes down, and then once the wing is extended, it goes all the way out. And the reason it was designed like that is with the large amount of prop clearance, they had no way to get adequate prop clearance unless they made the gear extremely long. And the engineers figured out if they bent the wing down, they could get the gear down and to a shorter aspect and then have it much better for being on the carriers. The wings fold for obvious reasons on a carrier. They put them up and down on the elevator of the carrier, bring them out on the flight deck, and then launch them. And you'll notice what they call the bridle cables under here, and they would hitch here and use it on the catapult shot to run it off. We'll walk back in a few moments and show you the tail hook for landing. When they came on the carrier, they would drop the hook, catch the wire, and then use that to slow them down so they could land on the carrier. One of the unique things about the Corsair is the cowl flaps, circumferential cowl flaps that open and close for cooling, so they can stand on the ground for a considerable period of time without overheating. The exhaust stacks come out on each side. You'll notice there's a little bit of oil. That's very characteristic of the radials because of the large piston to skirt clearance and piston to cylinder clearance, and oil, when they're cold, tends to drain off of it. The oil cooler is in the wing root on each side. And let's walk around this way and look at a little more of the mechanism. You can see the wing fold mechanism here, and while it is quite complicated to look at, it functions very, very well. You bring the wing down, this pin drives forward through this and holds the wing on. And obviously that's of crucial importance. The flaps are very large and allow landing at relatively slow speeds onto the carrier, and then the canopy, which is right up here, slides forward, but all takeoffs and landings are made with the canopy open. And that's in the event that you had to put down into an unimproved area. The canopy does not lock you in. On the tail, we have the tail hook, and this is what we were discussing earlier. The tail hook drops down, and that tail hook will catch the wire of the carrier and catch the wire on the aircraft carrier and slow the aircraft down. The tail wheel is retractable, as is the main gear. And if you looked at some of our videos, which we hope to link on our website, you'll see some great footage of the Corsair demonstrating its wonderful stuff. Great airplane to fly, very much fun, very maneuverable, was an outstanding fighter aircraft in World War II. Thank you for tuning in.
And we're back, joined again by Joel Perkins from Airbase Georgia. Stan is really one of the more talented pilots that we have in the CAF. Must be a joy to work with him.
Stan is one of my dear friends. I am where I am in the T6 today because Stan has taken me under his wing. I have a framed, it's not a picture, I don't know exactly what you would call it. It's a caricature, I guess, of Stan, and it's called the Evil Flight Instructor because he's always beating on you from the back seat, you know. But that's not true. It's honestly some of the best instruction that I've ever received. And Stan not only dedicates his time, but a couple of our guys, including me, have benefited from Stan's generosity with his own T6 giving instruction. So he has his office right across the street, so he's always available. And he is just very generous with everything that he does. He goes out of town for a couple of weeks at a time with one of our contracts. He was on set with Devotion for several weeks away, from his home and family. He also is away for firefighting, so he's away a lot. And for him to give us that time when he's always also away for 3 to 4 months of the year firefighting, it's just a real blessing to us. we couldn't have done some of these things without him on board.
And another talented individual from Airbase Georgia, we've mentioned his name several times, Philip Beagle, and he's really the one who put the nuts and bolts together of this of the deal to get the Corsair in the movie. But he contributes quite a bit to the wing as well.
Yes. So Philip is our idea guy, and he comes in and he roars in, throws ideas, and then leaves. And we're all looking at each other going, okay, what just happened? But Philip has a lot of energy. And without him, without his outgoing personality, we wouldn't be able to have landed this deal. He's working with the two other opportunities I mentioned earlier. So everybody at Airbase Georgia has a role to play. And just like a big family, there's conflict, and then we'll hug on each other, and then there's conflict, and we hug again. But everybody brings certain unique talents to the table that are required. And it all just works together at the end of the day. Really does.
Well, good. Sounds like a great team you have going there. And let's pick up with one of those team members, Philip Beagle, and find out more about how this deal all came together for the movie Devotion. Joining us now in this segment of CAF Warbird Tube, Philip Beagle. Philip, great to have you back. We enjoyed your hangar tour and looking at the workshop and all the goodies that go on there at Airbase Georgia. But this time around, we're going to talk a little more nuts and bolts about actually getting the Corsair into the movie Devotion. And for folks who don't know, the Atlanta area has become a hotbed for movie production, probably the last decade or so, or maybe a little longer than that. But it's kind of fortuitous for you to be just a few miles south of this new production center.
We are very, very lucky. And you mentioned it's been a hotbed, and here's the reason it's a hotbed. My stepdad back in the 70s started the Film Commission in Georgia, and he was responsible for bringing Deliverance, Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run, all to Georgia. And back in the early 90s, they went to him again, the governor and several senators went to him again and said, hey, Ed, we want you to start the movie industry again. And he said, okay, but you have to leave me alone and let me write the laws and I'll get it done. And he brought on 2 lawyers, Shay, which is a casting agent, and himself, and they wrote all the laws and got everything passed for you, what you see before you in Georgia, which is pretty cool if you think about it.
Yeah, so it really opened up a lot of doors, and it made it much easier for the film industry to operate in Atlanta. Oh,
absolutely. And ironically, the film industry in Atlanta now is the biggest industry in the United States. I mean, it's every single thing moved here, which is great for Georgia. You drive around the little streets of Noonan where I live, and this street's closed off. They're filming this, and there's 1940s cars zipping by. It's amazing. And so that, we're very lucky and to land to something like Devotion with our Corsair. It's just, it helps get that history out there, keep it alive. And it's better than using CGI because people feel the airplane, they see the airplane, they know it's real when they go see it.
And I would think for the actors as well, playing their parts, sitting in an actual airplane, not a mock-up, not a simulation, must add to their ability to bring the character to life.
So part of how we got this movie is I did just that. We were down in States where we're doing a flyover of a football game, and one of the main producers of the movie happened to be there. And I started chatting back and forth with him I talk to everybody. Give me a chance, I'll talk to a fence post. So I was sitting there chat with him. He goes, yeah, we're making a movie about Corsairs. And I go, look, we have a Corsair sitting right here. It's based here in Georgia. And in fact, that's ours 203 in the background right there. And I go, have you ever seen a Corsair run? He goes, no. And I go, have you ever seen a Corsair fly? And he goes, no. And I go, okay, we're going to fix this right now. So at that moment, I went and got our T6 pilot, put this guy in the back of the T6, and Stan, who then flew in the movie, got in the Corsair, and they did all sorts of formation work with the Corsair right there. And when that guy landed, he goes, I got it. He goes, I got what that airplane is. I got how big and how powerful it is. And it's part of why we do what we do, because those airplanes, it's great to see them sitting in a museum behind ropes, hanging from a ceiling, whatever it is. You get to see what the airplane's like. But when you get to feel the airplane crank up and you feel that 2,000 plus horsepower rolling through your body, you then have a connection with that airplane that'll last a lifetime.
Indeed. So what were the next steps after the initial ride and the excitement?
So I started chatting with him. This was a 6-month process, negotiating contracts, talking to producers, insurance. These guys are so particular about how everything's done, and I get it. I mean, you see right there in that one scene right there, that's a full aircraft carrier they built, 100% replica, 1-to-1 scale that they built that stayed there for 6 months, and they shut down a runway for 6 months. So they wanted everything. They wanted to know every single detail about our airplane, our pilot, what ratings, how are they capable. And so I spent, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours on the phone, just sitting there talking to producers, talking to talent scouts, talking to the film people. I mean, just every aspect of the movie called me and chatted with me, because number one is we're from Georgia, we're an unknown entity.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is they wanted to make sure that they were spending their money the best they can. And I got to say thank you to Jason out there, the Southern California wing, because he knew Kevin LaRosa, Jr., that is. And so he called him, and Kevin LaRosa Jr., as you well know from Top Gun Maverick, he also did all the aerial film work here too. And so Kevin, I talked to Kevin a whole bunch over the phone, pardon me, and Jason actually talked to Kevin and said, these guys are good guys, they know what they're doing, use them. Yeah. And so really the Southern California guys really kind of made it so we were in the movie.
Good. And, CAF has had a history of having some of our aircraft in movies, but it's sort of been a while. It's been a while. So as you say, we're an unknown quantity in the filmmaking world.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just like, for instance, what I'm standing on was a gigantic rubber mat they made to the exact dimensions of the aircraft carrier. And it was the detail, this teamwork, the detail, the focus, the everything. I mean, when you go see this movie in the theaters, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, it took me 6 months of negotiating contracts, prices, pilots. They wanted to know everything about the pilot before they let him fly on their production. And one of the ending scenes in the movie, which I think you'll see here in a little while, was Stan flying our Corsair 203, which is right there, in the ending scene in the movie. Which, I mean, what an honor, what a privilege to be able to have that airplane tell that story, using our airplane.
Who were some of the other pilots that were a part of the film?
So Steve Hinton Sr., Steve Hinton Jr., they both flew Corsairs in the movie. In fact, Steve Hinton Jr. and I talk all the time now. He's a great guy, really nice guy. And they spent 2 or 3 months down there flying almost every day. And you would see him do low approaches to the aircraft carrier, then break off or go zipping by us on the runway there. I mean, it was just the quality of pilots had to be the top tier, because when you watch the movie, those are real airplanes. Those are real propellers. Those are real, airplanes spitting fire, burning a gallon a minute, 5 feet away from stunt coordinators, stunt doubles. And those actors, they're just walking by the airplanes as they go zipping off down the runway, exactly like it would have been during World War II. So when I say the movie producers were particular about the pilots they picked, that's an under description at best.
Was there any point in the negotiations, putting everything together, where it looked like this was just all going to come apart, or was it relatively one step on top of another? Oh,
absolutely. One time it almost fell apart. Was because they wanted to use some outside pilots. And we have, the CAF in general has really stringent requirements on who can fly the airplanes. The pilots were great pilots, but they had to go through and jump through a whole bunch of CAF hoops to get qualified in our airplane. And I didn't want to have outside pilots fly, because at the end of the day, Stan has been doing this for 20 plus 30, 40 years. And part of the reward, or for us in general, is being a part of history, being a part of this airplane, being a part of this movie. And I wanted him to be able to achieve that dream, to be able to fly in a movie, which is not a bad deal. And
right.
So we ended up, I negotiated for that for a month. Phone calls every week, talking to Kevin LaRosa, producers, directors. And like I said, it was really Jason out there at SoCal that Kevin called Jason and said, hey, can this guy fly? And Jason said, 100%, he will do exactly what you need.
Okay.
And then the next day I got the call saying, hey, we're going to use Stan. We got to get him in SAG, Screen Actors Guild.
Sure.
And became a union member at that point in time. And it was a very arduous process to get him to become part of the SAG, Screen Actors Guild.
Oh, awesome. Well, I know you can't give me all the details, but you're also in negotiations for a couple of other airplanes from Airbase Georgia to be in upcoming
you
production.
may see a Mustang coming up here in a movie. It may be Red Nose. I'm not going to give too many details away. And also something I haven't told you yet. You may see our P-47 coming up in a movie as well. I'm in the process of negotiating that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it all circles back to what Ed, my stepdad did back in the 70s. And now all of a sudden, Corsair's in the movie or Mustang's in the movie. Maybe the P-47 is going to get in something. So it's coming full circle and fast.
Awesome. Well, right now we're going to close out this segment and we're going to take a look at some footage that you took. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to see.
So, being able to be on set was a lot of fun. Getting to watch the Corsairs go by was amazing. But what you're getting ready to see right now is one of the ending scenes in the movie. And it's the one time our Corsair flew in the movie with Stan flying it. And it took him about 3 days to set up everything, to get everything ready to roll, and to storyboard how the flying was going to be. But Jesse's already passed away at this point in time. And at the end of the movie, it's a beach shot where the sun's setting, Jesse's family's sitting on the beach, and here comes 203, our Corsair, just zipping right by it. And it was really moving to sit there and watch the last scene be our airplane.
Awesome. Let's take a look. We're back with Joel Perkins, Airbase Georgia leader. You're sort of the ringleader, the circus master, as it were, for all these talented individuals like Philip. It's I'm sure a challenge at times, but it's got to be exciting.
It's very exciting. I am a big proponent of everybody communicating. I want to hear what everybody has to say. People share ideas that many times it's things that I would never have thought of. They go, wow, why didn't we do that? Or why aren't we doing that? So, and like I said, it's like a big family. There's obviously conflict, but out of conflict comes resolution, and we have such talented people that conflict's okay. I welcome that, because then you're talking and you're solving problems and you're coming together. And at the end of the day, we've been very successful. The air shows that we do, and here's the other thing that I love: the veterans that come out, to share their stories, and the kids who come out and watch the airplanes and hear the motors, and you wouldn't believe the people with their phones and cameras. It's just everything that we do seems to generate excitement, and what we take for granted is we get to walk through those doors and do it every day. And you reach a point where it's, oh yeah, there's a Corsair. But you got to keep in mind to the people that don't do this every day, although they could. I'll get into that if you want me to. It's like this all moment. And I'm very fortunate to have a bird dog and a T6. And my bird dog's painted up and it's got rockets on it and all that kind of stuff. I can't tell you how many veterans have come up to me, Vietnam vets, almost in tears, want to tell me how that airplane saved their lives. I mean, what a thrill for me to be able to have that person share that story. And that's just one story of, there's hundreds of those kind of things going on with people that come out to the hangar and experiencing what we get to do and sometimes take for granted. I think I went off a little bit on that. I'm just really passionate about what we do. I'm passionate about the history. My grandfather served in the Philippines. You can't see it in my office, but I've got 2 Japanese flags he took off the Philippines in that battle. It's just incredible, and I want to continue to honor it. So I'm excited and passionate about it. I hope that comes through.
It does. It does, loud and clear. And that enthusiasm and passion that you have, of course, permeates through all the Airbase Georgia members who are participating, including the person we're going to talk about next, Greg Scott. Tell us a little bit about Greg, and he spent quite a bit of time on the movie set, making sure the Corsair was ready to go every day.
He did. He devoted quite a bit of his time away from his family. So thankful for him doing that. And Greg was the reason that airplane was able to perform down there. Greg has loved on that airplane, and it is not an easy airplane to work on. Everything's hard to get to. Everything's heavy. It's all hydraulic. And Greg has poured his heart into that airplane, and it's in great condition now. As a matter of fact, I talked to Stan today about flying it this week. We want to fly them, because if they don't fly, they break. That seems to be the trend. So, hats off to Greg. And there were some other folks. Rob helped with that. I'm sure Andy had a hand in it. I'm trying to remember back to that whole preparation and maintenance sequence. But, a lot of talented people, not just Greg, but Greg was the leader on that, made sure that airplane was ready to go.
All right, let's check in with Greg. He also shares your passion for that airplane. I think you'll hear that in his interview as well. Joining us now is Greg Scott from CAF Airbase Georgia. Greg, good to have you on the program tonight.
Good to be here, Steve.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your role with the movie Devotion. Well,
it was one of those things that kind of morphed into more than I thought it was going to be. Basically, I was technically there to maintain the airplane's readiness if we had to fly, or multiple moves. They were always moving the airplane around from one place to the next on set. So you're kind of Johnny on the spot. Hey, we need the missiles on, we need the missiles off, we need the tanks on, we need the tanks off. So that's the kind of thing that we did, all four of the crew chiefs.
All right. And you regularly maintain the Corsair as well when she's not being a movie star, right?
I do. Yes, that's my baby.
There you go. You have a maintenance background. You mentioned you and your son work on the airplane as well.
Yes, sir. I was a technician for Delta Airlines for about 22 and a half years, and then I changed divisions and went into the dispatch side of the house.
There you go. And you sort of were volunteered to join the Corsair, but I understand it's maybe not the greatest hardship, because you have a Navy connection in your life as well.
I do. My dad was a Pacific flyer on a PB-4Y2 in World War II, so it was kind of near and dear to my heart. I didn't get the opportunity to have my dad come to see the airplane. He passed away before. But he was a highly decorated Navy flyer in World War II.
Awesome. Well, as we talk, we're going to be looking at some just kind of random shots that you guys have taken during the shooting of the movie Devotion. Now, there were actually two locations that you were at. Explain exactly what happened at each one.
Well, in Savannah, it was originally more of a get to know the airplane for the actors. The other three Corsairs were flying on the West Coast, so Stan flew the Corsair over there, and I drove over to maintain it. And so they got their hands on the airplane, they got to crawl around, sit in the cockpit, get familiar with the aircraft. And Stan did a flight scene on the beach, Tybee Island, which is Savannah area, and then we moved to Statesboro.
All right. What was the typical day, if there was a typical day, on set like?
Well, it was apparent early on, they not only did they want to get first light, they wanted to get sunset too. So in the summertime, that turns out to be a pretty long day. Yeah. So we were at the hangar at 5:30 in the morning. The airplanes had to be on set by 6:15, 6:30, and that entailed either taxiing them. Sometimes it was too dark, and then we would just tow them over. We had to cross an active runway to get to the location.
Great. And looking at a little bit of movie magic in this picture as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's they did a lot of different things where they would put the airplane in a flight attitude and put the actors in it and do some filming while it was still on the deck.
So when we're watching the movie and we're seeing the actors in the cockpit, they're actually in the actual Corsairs. There's not mock-ups or Hollywood recreations. They're actually using the real thing.
I would say 95% or more that's true, to the detail that they wanted to make sure that the harnesses and everything in the cockpit of the airplane they were in was historically correct. So we would be changing out hardware in there just to meet that need.
What kind of preparations did you have to make to bring it to that authentic look? I mean, obviously there's modern avionics in the airplane, so you can fly in today's airspace. But did you have to make a lot of modifications to the airplane to make it authentic again?
No, we really didn't change anything at all because these were flying airplanes. So that part will probably be green screen, I would imagine, because they had mock-up cockpits and things like that were authentic. In fact, they had a Corsair cockpit fuselage that they used on a vehicle to simulate carrier landings. The thing would drive about 50 miles an hour and brakes would come on, and they had a hydraulic ram that would lift the tail of the airplane to simulate. And the actors were in it when they did it. So first couple of times they went through, it was kind of like, oh man, stop specs.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
Well, speaking of surprises, have you been behind the scenes on a movie before?
I had a friend of mine that in Miami that did some production work, and we were able to go on set for 21 Jump Street.
Ah, okay.
Many years ago. And I didn't think about it at the time, but it had many similarities from the standpoint that they'll take all day to get 5 minutes worth of film. You know, do it, redo it, you know, and let's move 4 Corsairs 12 inches to the right. You know, it's like, really? Okay. So
Meanwhile, the sun is moving.
Go ahead.
Meanwhile, the sun is moving as well as you
True.
try to get that perfect shot.
Yeah, there's a lot of hurry up and wait, and there's a lot of hurry up and hurry up.
Any surprises that you came across?
Not really surprises. It was during COVID, so it was a little, we called them the COVID police. They walked around and made sure everybody had their mask on, even though we weren't anywhere near the production folks. So we had our own trailer set up so we could go relax when they didn't need us. And if they needed us, they called us on radio and off we ran. The constant testing, every day you had to test. So that was, I don't know about a surprise, but it was something that I wasn't necessarily expecting.
Sure. Well, along with the photos we're looking at, you've got some video, and we're going to take a look at some scenes from the filming of Devotion, featuring Airbase Georgia's Corsair.
Yeah, Kevin?
Yeah.
I suppose when you were on set, you had an opportunity to meet obviously the actors, but you also met some other of the people who were involved in the film, including the author of the book, Adam Makis.
Yes, I did, and the books that I have read of his are very historically accurate. He does a tremendous amount of homework to make sure that he gets it right. And my understanding is Glenn Powell befriended Thomas Hudner before he passed away, and kind of was the genesis behind getting the book made into a movie. But he surprised me how young he was. He was like 40. It's like, man, guy is unbelievable, the research he does for World War II's books.
Yes, indeed. All right, here's some of the actors getting familiar with the airplanes.
Yeah, they were doing some promo filming or shoots, so they were doing different poses and different people on the wings and things like that. This was basically for marketing.
Okay. And not knowing, how much exposure you had to the actors playing the roles, especially the Jesse Brown and Thomas Hudner, but did the actors themselves have any insights or any thoughts that they had regarding the airplane and hopefully was making it easier for them to be in character? That's kind of a roundabout question, but
well,
maybe just
not really. You've got technical experts as far as the flying and everything else. Right. You have Steve Hinton and Steve-O Hinton and John Hinton and that whole group, the Erickson group. They did a lot of that. They would literally stand next to the actors in the cockpits if they had any questions or technical advice in that aspect. So they had a lot of resources and a wealth of knowledge, just unbelievable.
What are some of the memories that you'll take away from this experience?
When you're in the heat of the battle, it doesn't seem always like it's that much fun. But when you sit back and look at it, I mean, this is a historical movie. And so as time goes on, it's kind of like, I really had the opportunity to spend a month and a half making a historically accurate movie with some of the best flying I've ever seen in my life. It was unbelievable. And I'm pretty confident that it's going to show in the movie. The actors were very accessible, although as part of the COVID protocol, they had separation between the first crew and the second crew. And the one thing that, Jonathan, because of our connection, when he came to the airbase, he always waved and said hello when he was, within earshot. So he was not standoffish or anything. He was very, very approachable. And so was Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell's mother was there, and the director's father was there. If I'm remembering correctly, he's a Navy flyer as well.
Okay. And just a couple of minutes left in this segment, but kind of an interesting experience with trying to film the start sequence on T6. Now, this is previous to the movie itself, right?
Well, it was actually the Corsair.
Oh, it was the Corsair. Okay. It
was the Corsair, and Jonathan wanted to film the sequence of where your hands go, what you're doing when we spread the wings and when we fold the wings, and then he wanted to go through a real start sequence, and he was filming the whole thing. So we had never done that before because there's a lot of prop wash coming off that Corsair, even at idle. And so we were a little concerned, but we best stand we could, bolted everything down, as best we could. And we literally got up on the ladder with him and held him just to make sure that there couldn't be any issue with him falling off the ladder. But he wanted to film Stan starting the airplane and where his hands were. He had a notebook everywhere he went, and he wrote down little details so he would be more accurate as far as being a pilot. In fact, he asked one of our pilots, that's a general at the airbase, what do you do with your hands? And he says, the one thing you don't do, you don't put them in your pockets. So.
Very good. Greg, thank you for being with us in this segment. And any final thoughts before we sign off?
Only that I appreciate the opportunity to do this and to share this with the people that love aviation and World War II warbirds. So thank you.
Thank you. Joining us now is Jason Inman, who is the first assistant director of the second unit of the movie Devotion. And Jason, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you here. You've been involved in a number of films. People might recognize Guardians of the Galaxy, and also Inception and Fifth Wave, a few of the movies that you've been involved with, and now Devotion. How did you come to be involved in this production?
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to be here this morning with you guys. I have been very blessed in my career to have met many people along the way and made lots of friendships. And in this particular instance, one of my friendships became with Molly Smith and Black Label Media. I've done several of their movies, and between my relationships with Black Label Media, Molly, and Bruce Franklin, who was the line producer of Devotion, they brought me in to do the second unit and oversee all the fun stuff with the airplanes mostly on the aircraft carrier, but there were a few other things. Just to be clear, without going down a deep rabbit hole, there's a first unit where all the actors are, all the talking and all the drama. Second unit is usually where all your action, your explosions, anything real fun, exciting popcorn movie stuff. And in this instance with Devotion, there also was an aerial unit. And so the aerial unit went to Wenatchee, Washington, and also did some stuff off the coast of Savannah, Georgia, to get a lot of that air-to-air out in the middle of, nowhere feel. So you could just really feel the actors in the airplanes, and then get the airplanes themselves, which become very much a character in the movie.
Right.
Everyone knows Jonathan Majors and Glenn Powell star in the movie. And hopefully when they walk away, they realize that the co-stars were the Corsairs. Excellent.
How many different vintage aircraft did you have when you were working with the second unit?
In terms of volume, we probably had 20 or 25 aircraft from across the country. We had Bearcats, we had Corsairs, we had a Skyraider, we had a DC-3, we had forgive me, it's been almost 2 years now, so my memory's stretching a little on the thin side. But we had a lot of aircraft, and as a guy who does many movies, not just aircraft movies, when you think about things that can go wrong, when I'm doing movies with cars break down all the time, and we have guys that run in with battery packs or gasoline or wrenches to fix them, get them up and running so that we can continue filming. So my initial thought when they told me we were going to do this movie with 85 and 90-year-old antique aircraft, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a challenge. And to be fair, there were many, many challenges, but I can tell you with much elation that there was never a delay on the aircraft. There was never an aircraft that broke down. We never waited on the aircraft. It was, to this day, I scratch my head and I go, I don't understand how that works or how that happened. What I know now, what I've since learned about aircraft and flying is I think it's a testament to the mechanics and the maintenance schedule of aircraft. And it's what keeps you safe when you're, 10, 20, 30,000 feet in the air. There's no place to pull over, get gas, check your tires, or, you get that. Those aircraft have to be air ready and airworthy. And so, these aircraft have obviously been kept in order and kept airworthy. So it was amazing. It was very, very impressive to see.
One of the other characters, you mentioned the actors, the airplanes, but also the aircraft carrier itself. That was a pretty monumental set build, wasn't it?
It was. It really was. And, they, believe it or not, they scouted actual period correct aircraft carriers. And forgive me, again, it's been a couple of years. But I know they looked, I think, in Wilmington, North Carolina, and some other spots. And they thought, well, maybe we find a real aircraft carrier. There's not that many of them left that are period correct, and the ones that are used as museums, and would presented a whole host of other logistical challenges in order to film on them, let alone land aircraft on and off of them. And so the decision was made to build one because we could just make it what we wanted, where we wanted, and we could control it. And so again, they set off and they scouted all over the country for airports, for hangars, for which state they wanted to film in. There's a lot of logistics and politics and finance, that comes into all that. But ultimately, they settled on Georgia, and 95% of the movie or more was shot in and around the greater Savannah, Georgia area. But about 30 or 45 minutes east of Savannah, they found an airport called in Statesboro. It was Statesboro Airport, and it was an old, I believe, Army base, and so there was a triangular runway system, and so they were able to take one of the runways out of order and start building the whole main. Just blanked on the name. The
superstructure.
Yeah, the superstructure of the aircraft carrier. It was cost prohibitive to build the entire thing, but they built the important part. They built the middle, and they were going to have to do a little computer enhancement and augmentation anyway to get the boat on the water and up off of the water. So they put their money where it counted, and they built the superstructure, and it was probably a little over a third to a half of the boat.
Wow.
And it was that middle section, but it was very large, and it made it easy for airplanes to land and take off of. Good.
You mentioned that this has been almost 2 years since you worked on the film, to the point where it's now in the theaters. You looking back at that, what are some of the different experiences that you may have that still stick out in your mind almost 2 years later with this film?
I can tell you there were quite a few things. We were all excited about this movie. I've done many movies, as you alluded to at the beginning of the segment, and my projects that I work on that I find the most fulfilling and rewarding are the ones that are based on true stories. And so there ends up being an energy or a feeling on some of those projects where you're making something important, right? And it's not always about money. It's not always about award season, Academy Awards and Golden Globes or whatever, but it's about telling a true story. Marvel does a really good job about telling the comic book stories, and they're really good at it, and they're great stories, but they're make-believe, made-up stories. Then when you have stories that are based on real people and real things that happened, it just changes the narrative, and it changes the way that you feel about the project. And there's just this energy, and this energy, you could feel it in this movie because everybody knew that this happened. This was all real history, and this was a story that needed to be told about Jesse and Tom and their relationship and the war and the airplanes and all the facets and the sub variables that go into all these things that have to happen in order for you to end up with this story. And so you have that. You have, for me personally, at one point I was in the running to do Top Gun, and that didn't come to fruition, unfortunately. So I felt like this was a second chance for me to do a big aerial movie. And just coming back to what we talked about earlier with the antique aircraft, while we were doing it and when we were doing it, I marveled at the fact that Top Gun Maverick, and the original Top Gun for that matter, had the full support of the United States Naval Aviation Department. If they needed a new plane, hey, make a phone call, get it over here. It's not that simple, but it kind of is compared to the 20 some odd antique aircraft that we had pulled from all over the country from private collections. If one of those planes broke down, there's no phone call, there's no other plane coming.
Right.
So you end up a little bit of adrenaline on that, going, this is working, this is really working. It just takes it to a whole nother level. And then lastly, just the challenge of, as I talked about with cars, anytime you start to have moving variables or moving elements, whether it's people, cars, boats, or in this case, airplanes, it changes the range, it changes the dynamic, and it changes the risk factor, if you will. And so we were doing things with some of these pilots, by the way, were not necessarily movie pilots. We brought people in, it's their plane. They're not just going to let us take their 90-year-old antique aircraft and put a stunt pilot in it. So you have to go the other direction. You have to take some of those people And, we had an amazing aerial coordinator, Kevin LaRosa Jr., oversaw the entire aerial coordination and filming of Devotion, and also, by the way, from Top Gun Maverick as well. So he was kind of sliding in some of the same people, not all. There were many new players at the table, but he was able to take a lot of those pilots who may have not been in front of a camera before and just talk them through it, and made them look amazing. They were already amazing, but he went that extra mile to make sure that they looked like they had been doing this forever, and made the filming look effortless, made the planes look amazing. And he was assisted by Michael Fitzmaurice, the director of photography, who sat in the back seat with him on Top Gun. And when you're filming at altitude at high speeds, it's hard to reset and come back and do it all over again. So you try to get it on the first take.
Definitely. And speaking of the airplanes, let's believe you brought along the trailer for the movie, and let's go ahead and play that and take a look at some of that aerial photography that went into the movie Devotion.
Thank you. And here is the trailer. If you haven't already seen the movie or you haven't seen the trailer, please take a couple minutes to enjoy.
You're the only person I ever met who belonged in the sky. Just remember you belong down here with us too, okay?
The commanding officer called you one of the best pilots he's ever seen. It must be hard being the
Naval aviator? Absolutely.
The whole world's looking different. Did you ever think that you'd be in a squadron with a colored aviator?
Lieutenant Tom Hudner. Jesse Brown. It's good to meet you.
We're taking a slight detour on the way home. Say again?
What are you going to find out about your wingman cruising at 10,000 feet, Lieutenant? Put him in a little bit of trouble. Who knows? We might get a peek at who he really is.
The North Koreans came pouring over the 38th parallel.
Our guys need help, and we're up.
We knew this day might come.
Yeah, it doesn't make it any easier.
The most important thing is this. We bring everyone home.
Mistakes get us killed. Can't tell you how many times people have told me to give up, quit, die even. That's why you can't always do what you're told.
It's a mag!
If I did, I wouldn't be here.
What do you want me to do?
Just be my wingman.
Red flags are seen!
The real battle in all of life is being someone that people can count on. Show off.
That was pretty good.
It's good.
Well, Joel, before we wrap everything up tonight, there are a few questions that have kind of popped to mind, and that is, so you had an unexpected windfall with this. I think you described it off air as an early Christmas present, but you really have also gone above and beyond to do some investing in not only the Corsair but some of the other aircraft. So, how are some of the proceeds from this windfall being used?
So we were able to, like I mentioned, upgrade all the avionics in the P-51, a nice Garmin package. We had a real problem with noise in the P-51, especially with the backseater. Certain engine settings, the backseater just couldn't hear, so we were able to invest in an intercom system that canceled all that out. And I've had nothing but great reports from the pilots on that system. We were able to upgrade some of the avionics in the Dauntless. We're going to do some more of that. That's really the next on the list. That money was passed around investing in the Stearman. The Stearman project is farther than I'd ever imagined. Those guys are just craftsmen that are knocking that project out. And we had discussions as late as today about ordering an engine for that airplane, because it's a 6-month lead time on the engine, so we've got to be ahead of that. And we did some facility upgrades. You know, part of our income streams is renting the facilities for weddings or different events. So we poured that money, some of that money, back into improving our facilities, paint, floor, ceiling tiles, to make it more attractive to people who would rent for whatever event. So that's why we kind of diversified where we put that money, and we're already seeing the returns in different ways.
And you also put some of that money back into the Corsair.
Well, yes. So we upgraded the radios, put a nice Garmin stack in it with Garmin GPS, cut a brand new panel. And we're going to do some more of that work to the panel, upgrading different avionics to DG, Arpish Horizon. We put a engine monitoring system in it from JPI. So we've got 2 JPI 9-cylinder monitors with fuel flow, which is just amazing. And the trick there, it took us a long time to do that, because we had to find the right fuel flow transducer to fit the fuel line. Because as I remember correctly, it's a 1-inch fuel line.
Oh,
that tells you a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we had to work very closely with Gardner Avionics on the field, who've been very good to us, to find a solution, and it's just been working great.
Super. In the few moments that we have left, you mentioned that you have several hundred members who are part of Airbase Georgia, but if someone wants to get involved, how can they get involved with the Airbase?
Well, it's really simple. You know, I see people come in through our doors all the time, and they're like, "Wow, what is this place? And can we walk in the hangar? Can we really go in there?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go. Get on the airplane. Look in the cockpit." I mean, they're just like, "We can really do this?" And what they don't understand is you can walk in the door as a visitor and walk out as a member.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next time you show up, you know, we'll put a wrench in your hand, or, you know, we'll find a job for you. And you can not only look at these airplanes, but in a very quick instant become go from a spectator to a participant in preservation. Yeah. It's really simple. And I'm so excited to see, you know, when I'll always make sure if somebody comes to the door and I'm standing there, we greet them, take them, give them a tour. And George Harrison and Willie Womack just give the best tours ever. So I had a young man that's a Delta mechanic last week. He came in and he's like, "Man, I want to start turning wrenches on these things." I'm like, "Brother, let me show you. We'll get you plugged in." So, you know, I think people think there's this invisible fence up, this mystical barrier of like, well, I could never do that. Yeah, you can. It's really simple, and we'll show you how.
That's awesome. And give us your website address.
AirbaseGeorgia.org.
AirbaseGeorgia.org.
Yep, Georgia spelled out.
All righty. And if you haven't done so already, go see the Corsair. It's the star of the movie Devotion. We can say that within the CAF audience because airplanes are king, right? And it is in theaters now. It is a great story. And if you've not familiar with it, you will enjoy it. If you are familiar with it, you'll enjoy the film as well. And again, Adam Makos's book, Devotion, which the film is based on, it's a great read. Joel, thank you very much for joining us tonight and helping pull all the segments together. Your team has really done a great job in helping tell the story of the Corsair and this movie. And also thank you for sharing your passion and your enthusiasm for World War II aviation.
Thank you, Steve. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Now, folks, if you have any ideas for topics you'd like to hear about in upcoming episodes, send Leah Block an email at media@cafhq.org. Again, thank you to the entire team from Airbase Georgia for sharing their talents with us tonight. Until the next time, from the Commemorative Air Force, I'm Steve Buss. Have a great night.